So growing up, I liked to draw and sketch and doodle a lot, but I was never particularly good. And I got a lot of feedback, much to that general vibe from my friends, and I kind of got scared and self-conscious, and it was middle school, everyone gets a little self-conscious and full of themselves around that time, so I kind of gave up. But I thought that this Genius Hour would be a lovely chance to get back into drawing. And so I decided to see how much I could improve my drawing ability if I did one sketch a week for 8 weeks. And the answer became very clear that it would not be much. So I decided to get some advice from my girlfriend who goes to OCAD, and she said, well, she laughed at me because you need to draw a lot more than once a week if you want to get any good. So I started to draw more, I did more exercises, and I did about usually 3 or 4 sketches a week, which is still probably not quite enough if you want to get really good, but for the purposes of this Genius Hour, I think it was enough. I started off as a general guide with my best possible drawing of a Dalek from Doctor Who, and I did that at the beginning of the course. It's not too bad. It took me about half an hour to draw very slowly. The details are very scarce, and there's some shading, but you can kind of tell I had no idea what I was doing. And I revisited that about a week later with just a quicker sketch to see if I could get the basic shapes down. I then moved on to kind of sketching my sister sitting on the couch. Didn't work out too well. The lines are very inconsistent in thickness. So I got myself some better supplies as well. Better pencils, sharpeners, erasers. So I started doing things, getting a little more creative. I really like to draw monsters and creatures for whatever reason. It's probably part of my reason I love video games, the boss characters. So I started getting a little more creative. This one, I'm told, looks very much like Kang and Kodos from The Simpsons. I really like the shapes. And I'm quite a fan of the teeth. You'll see more of those later. But there's really not much shading going on except for kind of around the back. So it's very basic, but I'm starting to get shape down here. I did a more personal, closer sketch of my sister's face, but again, I didn't really have any unique skills down here. The shading's not very good, so it looks very flat. Again, my love of monsters. I did a little homunculus in a bottle, though the shading, again, still needs a little bit more work. I tried to actually make it look creepy. It came out a little too cute, in my opinion, though others disagree. So at this point, I decided to get a little more technical and look at specific tutorials for things. So I did a tutorial of an eye, and then I practiced it a whole bunch of times. So that I found that helped me out a lot in my future drawings, because the eyes are always usually the center of attention. And then I love trees. But I am not very good at trees. And unfortunately, I don't improve too much about those, because I focus so much on proportions of living creatures. I really should have gone into more trees, and I think that would be a next step for my Genius Hour. And I went a little cartoony with octopus. It's not an original octopus, it's based on one I found online, and you'll find a link to it in my Genius Hour. But it helped me get some shapes again, like control and line control as well. So, if I can imitate what I see, I can ideally imitate what I imagine. Then I started to want to get more technical skills, line control and thickness and shading, so I started doing different exercises. These are ones where you go around and you try to stay on the line for control. This one was more shading in trees, line control. This one was an Italian artist who very much liked to draw curvy women, so I didn't really go towards him as much, because I didn't want my sketchbook to be full of curvaceous women. So I tried some sketches of my hand, just still life sketches, which these ones really helped me out in terms of proportions, because everyone has hands, but just how long each of the fingers are in comparison to one another. I looked up an actual tutorial to help me draw my dogs that are pugs. And they're kind of tricky because they have a lot of wrinkles. But I think I got that worked out, and that helped me with hard versus soft lines. So I could draw kind of like, get more details done in my sketches. And then more hands. And I thought I'd put together my eyes and hands into a similar picture. I tried to start out the ears, but they didn't turn out the greatest. My little Cthulhu man. And incomplete work. I wanted to do some skeletons crawling out of an eye for whatever reason. It was getting close to Halloween, so I was watching a lot of horror movies. And some basic concept art for the skeleton. I tried to do a cobra just from memory freehand. It turned out not too bad. I'm not quite happy with the scales. I probably went into too much detail. And I got an example from my girlfriend at OCAD how she would have done it to make it suggest scales without going into all the details. My own little Humpty Dumpty creation. I'm quite happy with his pants and his tucked-in collared shirt. That was more just a doodle. Had a lot of difficulty with the hand. And then, of course, a lot more practice with the eyes and the hands, because it's one thing to do it once, but you want to be able to get it done again and again until you can do it without a reference. At that point, I started more freehand again. This is a knight with ridiculously exaggerated proportions. His upper body is very large, and his arms are quite large, but his legs and hands and equipment are very tiny. So I thought that'd be a little silly. More hand practice, getting a little more cartoonish and less detailed so I can help exaggerate it in other features and other pictures. And I wanted to do something a little more abstract. It's based on an artist I saw on Pinterest he usually does it in pen, which might turn out a little bit better actually. Very heavy contrast. This one's kind of based on my father, at least below the head. My personal favorite sketch is this little imp inspired by the creatures from Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. Guillermo del Toro recently made a remake, and they're much creepier than my little pig with a fluffy tail. But I'm quite content with him. I kind of utilized the eyes and the teeth from the mouth I practiced. I'm quite happy with the ears. The nose could use a little work. And saving me on it close, but you'll notice there's a subtle shading around the little cottontail, and I find it helps it pop quite a bit. Not quite happy with the fork, though. Could use a little more work. More practice. Just mouths, mostly cartoonish ones. And I tried to get some folk art done, though I'm not too great at it. It requires too much math, actually. I should have got a ruler out that might have helped me. And a more realistic knight with more details. This was based on another drawing I found online, though I added my own little details. The tree insignia on the front, the sun and the moon on the gauntlets. And I'm quite happy with how the chainmail turned out on the arms. This is my Halloween costume. It was a giant skull I put on my head, and I thought, why not sketch it? Again, quite happy with how the teeth turned out. And the proportions aren't bad, though the nose could use some work. And I wasn't quite sure how to shade the eyes. Some more hands. I always wanted to be Lumiere as I was growing up, so I thought, evil Lumiere. I'm not quite finished this one. I haven't really had time to add his second arm. The idea that I always wanted the left arm to have his candle fingers kind of grasping out at something. More practice. And of course, time to return to the Dalek at the end of 8 weeks. And a whole bunch of sketches that I didn't show you. This is my new Dalek. You'll notice it has a lot more details than the original Dalek. Though I'm still not quite happy with the little circles. They're not quite uniform. my pencil was getting very dull at this point, and I didn't have a sharpener to help me out. But I'm quite content with the details around here and on the head. And if you want to see it in more detail, you can see it on my blog. It's in an extra large picture, so you can notice the actual difference, because it doesn't look that much better than my original Dalek picture from far, but there are a lot of little details I've got in there. It's not perfect by any means, but I'm pretty happy with it. And so I have absolutely no talent towards drawing, but I'm quite content with myself. So I think if people want to improve drawing, then they just need to practice a lot. It's hard to make time in this day and age, especially if you've got post-secondary school and 6 courses and 8 essays due every week. But I also found it to be very de-stressing. So I tended to want to make time to do my Genius Hour, which I thought helped me out here a lot. And I hope if you're watching this to improve your own drawing, practice, practice, practice. I find looking at tutorials on YouTube usually helps out. Just gives me an idea where to start, and then just practice and see where you improve. Look for artists that you know, ask for their opinion, because they know what it's like to receive negative criticism, and they're good at giving you constructive criticism in a way that won't hurt your feelings. I know my girlfriend helped me out a lot, and good luck to you all.